Hi, everyone. Welcome back to day three of Chocolate Milk Cafe National's kind of takeover of our own page. Hopefully, you have been following us and you saw our live, and then you saw the chat with Mama Hakima. And today we are here to introduce ourselves as the board of Chocolate Milk Cafe National. Um, so you see myself, Lashonda, and I'll have everyone else introduce themselves. Um, yeah, I'm gonna introduce the board and let you talk, and then I'll circle back to myself and explain who I am. So who wants to take it away first?
I am.
You're gonna go ahead.
No, I'll go because I'm off mute. I'm the only one.
Okay,
I'm off.
go right ahead.
I am Takesha. Um, she, her pronouns. I am the executive director. Oh no, that's not my board role. I am president of the board. Um, you may see me once in a while around, but I am usually doing a lot of the behind the scenes here. I don't really know how to describe my role as the president. I feel like I'm just here to help wrangle everything in and get us all organized and on the right path to making sure that all of our ducks are in a row.
And what brought you to Chocolate Milk Cafe in general?
All right. Well, so you may know this, and you probably, if you don't, you'll learn. Lashonda is my sister. And while I was pregnant or expecting my first, she was going for her IBCLC, and that inspired me to breastfeed. And my inspiration for breastfeeding led me on a whole entire path to support natural parenting, all these different things. I'm an unschooling or homeschooling family, self-directed. So when Lashonda brought up maybe bringing a chocolate milk cafe to our New York, New Jersey area, I was on board because I've always wanted to be part of a breastfeeding support group that was Black centered here in New Jersey. So I helped. I mean, helped her with organizing and getting everything together, but also just hearing the name Chocolate Milk Cafe was really great. I just like, you can't get a better name than that. And you heard me say that actually in the last video with Akiva. And just being meeting all of the other fellow IBCLCs and breastfeeding or lactating advocates in the group, it just seemed like a good fit. I know we kind of toy back and forth with doing our own are coming together as one group, but we just couldn't get away from that name and attracted to like all that Mama Hakima was doing in Uzazi Village in Kansas City. What else inspired me? Black Breastfeeding Week was a good inspiration. I love doing that in New Jersey and seeing everyone come together and just basically providing the support that I received, but with that extra edge that I didn't know I needed when I was breastfeeding. Because by the time I got into like more Black centered care, my twins were almost 2 and they weaned at 27 months. So I didn't really have the Black breastfeeding support. I didn't know a lot of Black breastfeeding feeders. My friend that I'm really close to now, her oldest is the same as her youngest is as old as my oldest. So we met when she was no longer nursing either. So a lot of the friends and family friends in the circle I had when we were starting out were not Black. So I always felt different in some spaces because while that's what inspired me to breastfeed in public and everything, I was just always aware of like my breasts being bigger and browner in spaces, and I know it would have been nicer to be around people who looked more like me and whose babies looked like mine, and who were doing what I was doing and not feeling kind of like an outlier. So it feels good and it feels refreshing and warming to now be a part of Chocolate Milk Cafe in these spaces. So that's, I don't know. I think I went a little around, but that's what brought me through it. Like I credit a lot of my breastfeeding stuff to my sister. Like it really did help me for her to be going on that journey because I don't know if I would have gone down the same exact path without that little. All she did was tell me that I could express milk for my boobs myself without a. And I was just like, oh what? Okay, let's get it going. So yeah. All right. Well, I'm
And
gonna
as the older sister, I'm also going to input in that she's cheap. And when she found out that she's frugal, and when she found out that she didn't have to pay for milk outside of her own body, that was a
Well,
whole.
I'll do you one better. I was super crunchy or super into natural organic, and they didn't have very good organic formula options. I was like, there's brown rice, and whatever sugar in this formula that doesn't make sense because that had Dr. Oz over here talking about that has arsenic in it. I'm not gonna give that to my baby, and because I'm thinking you breastfeed and you formula feed together, and then when I didn't find what I wanted, I wasn't doing Similac or Enfamil or anything like that. You told me, and my cousin was like, "Oh my, I didn't respond to the pump and all these." So in my head, I'm like, I may not respond to the pump or be able to. Once my sister was like, "No, here's how you hand it. You can." She's learning all these things, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's awesome! I can get the milk out of my boobs alone, so I don't have to worry about the formula." And it just set me. Yeah, I am frugal. We made a cloth diapering, baby, but all those things were made out of being cheap. All right. Again, I'm gonna stop.
All right. Thank you, Takesha. And Nubia.
Greetings. My name is Nubia. I am a proud board member of Chocolate Milk Café National and the co-facilitator for the Yonkers group. And what brought me to centering Black breastfeeding, I have 5 children of my own. I breastfed all of them, and I think it was the experiences with my first 2 not really having, like Takesha said, a place where you feel kind of just comfortable in your own skin, you know, breastfeeding in a group and really wanting to bring that. So when the opportunity came, I happened to be in the midst of midwifery school and all this stuff happening, but I was like, no, this is important. I definitely want to be able to do it. And I'm so glad that I did because just watching the families thrive and just be in space with each other, supporting, you know, one another and kind of figuring this whole thing out is really, really empowering for me. So I'm grateful for the space. I'm super excited for the things that we're going to do on a national level. And I think it's important as a birth worker and as a traditional midwife to foster the idea of sustaining and providing for your children with your own body. So grateful to be here and hold space with you ladies and excited for all that we have coming up.
Yay. Thank you. And now Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicki Neisen, and I am a member of the board and also a co-facilitator in New Jersey for the East Orange group. I'm trying to think back as to when I first heard about Chocolate Milk Café. I feel like it might have been from you, Takesha. And when I first heard it, I was so intrigued. And I thought, this is really a great idea, but not only a great idea, really needed. And I have 2 daughters that are 36 and 38, and I breastfed them. I actually nursed through a pregnancy, and I tandem nursed, and I nursed for 4 years and 4.5 years, my children. And I have 5 grandchildren that were all completely breastfed. But that was not the experience I saw. Growing up, I didn't see breastfeeding at all growing up in the Black community. So it was just a void. And the first time I saw breastfeeding, I was 14, and it had such an impact on me that it planted this seed in my mind that I am going to breastfeed. I didn't know anything about it. So fast forward, I eventually became married, got pregnant, had babies. I experienced breastfeeding support in many ways, but never with a focus on African Americans. And I realized, having heard you say this, Takesha, I was usually the only Black person breastfeeding where I was. And so, but it really struck home when I'm also a lactation consultant and a breastfeeding coordinator in my WIC clinic in East Orange. And I actually worked in a whole bunch of WIC clinics in the Newark, East Orange area. And what I began to see was that when I encountered African American women and I would ask them about breastfeeding, too many, not all, but too many were like, oh, won't that make you too attached to your children? Or they would say, I don't have time, I have to work. And I'm thinking in my mind, but wait, haven't you heard about why it's important to breastfeed? You know, that kind of thing. And so I realized that there was something terribly wrong that had gone so far afield and that was so twisted and kind of perverse in our culture. And so I spent the last, since around 2005, when I started working for WIC, trying to help educate and encourage and promote breastfeeding in the population that I work with, which includes African Americans, Latinos, Caribbean, Africans, and a smattering of others. But gradually over time, because there is a movement for breastfeeding, I would find African American women more and more saying, I'm interested in breastfeeding, but they would give it up way too quick. It was just like there was a foundation for parenting, for mothering that was missing. And so I'm now encountering more and more who are sustaining their breastfeeding, doing exclusive breastfeeding. And when I heard about the Chocolate Milk Café, prior to that, I would try to have classes, get women to come for breastfeeding, but it was very difficult for them to come. But when they heard the name Chocolate Milk Café, they would all inevitably do the following things. They would chuckle and they go, like they were really kind of intrigued by the name, and then were kind of inspired to come. And we had our meetings in the WIC clinic. It was quite interesting. And so I started getting larger and larger groups of women wanting to come, and sometimes spouses or partners. And so what I found is that there's something about the title, there's something about it that draws women who are African American in the African diaspora to be a little bit more open, because I think one of the things that this breaking of our culture where breastfeeding was kind of eliminated is that it closed the mind around this as a possibility. And what I'm seeing is we're creating this place, this community where breastfeeding is more normal. And that's the goal of the Chocolate Milk Café, which is to normalize breastfeeding. And so we are beginning to find and nurture and support the creation of champions for breastfeeding, families that champion breastfeeding, that champion nurturing lovingly their children. And it's very powerful. And I find that if a woman's feeling and teetering on the edge of not sure and she comes, she starts to think it is a possibility where she didn't before. So thank you and congratulations to Chocolate Milk Café National. It really makes it possible for this kind of support to begin to expand across the country so that other women will have the chance not to miss doing what is significantly a part of all of us, which is loving and nurturing our children, starting by giving our own milk to them. So thank you. And this board, I have to say, I'll tell you, and these facilitators are awesome from so many backgrounds, just those who are here. So thank you.
I agree. I want to highlight that for a second. We have two IBCLCs, one who works for WIC, one who's been worked in hospitals. We have a midwife and a CLC. Like, we are all over the place. I love it. I am just a breastfeeding advocate who has nursed twins, so I got some experience.
Oh, Takesha, you have a great deal of experience. And not only that, but Takesha is part of baby wearing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so we really bring all of these qualities into our groups. There are those who are yoga instructors who just bring all of these incredible, diverse qualities, but they're all being drawn because they want to normalize breastfeeding, because they want to create this this ever advancing, spreading oasis where love is the norm.
We are a very diverse
Right.
Group of people. So I'm gonna put myself
I
back on.
wanted
Shonda can introduce herself.
oh, yes. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
No, Nubia, go.
Oh no, I was just saying something that you said, Vicky, that kind of struck me that, and because I realized I've heard that also, but didn't put two and two together. Where a mother says, "Well, isn't that going to make the baby too attached?" And that is a throwback from slavery, where it's like you don't want to let your child get too attached for fear of that inevitable separation that might happen, and that we are like reclaiming that with Chocolate Milk Cafe National. And then the other thing that you said, like just thinking about Black breastfeeding as the Black breastfeeding family, and how that was something that really evolved at the Yonkers location, where it came down to dads coming with the expectant spouse, and really wanting to like know more, like, how do I support? I know I can't be the one, but what is my role in this? And then having the dads have like their own kind of conversation to talk about whatever things they're going through in that postpartum period as well. So it's really nice how it's organically kind of taken shape, and I feel like this is really the right time to let our cup runneth over, so to speak. Because it seems to be flowing, in that direction, and I'm really proud of how things have evolved.
Flowing?
You a poet, because you just got them. I'm
showing my shirt. You guys, we're all wearing the shirt.
All right.
Okay, yay.
I'm regretting that I didn't make this 2 weeks long of a launch, because then we could have just then highlighted all the different things that we talk about in our chapters. Because how can I connect with my baby as the non-lactating person? It's like in the top 5 questions of like breastfeeding. Yes. Like, well, how the baby poops after they eat, right? You got other things you can do.
Yeah.
Shonda, let's get you to introduce yourself before because we can go off topic.
We can go on and on. Okay, I said I would circle back to me. So I'm LaShonda. As Takesha said, I am her sister, and on the board of these fabulous ladies as well. So Chocolate Milk Cafe, I sat in a conference I was working at the Department of Health, the DOH in New York City at the time, and Mama Hakima came to do a presentation. And she talked about Uzazi Village, and in there she must have mentioned Chocolate Milk Cafe. I ended up taking her to lunch because I was so intrigued, and I hope you watched the video from the day before with Mama Hakima, and if you've heard of her before, you know that she's a very dynamic person and does so much for the community. And like I'm sure you were drawn in, I was just drawn into her when I met her. So kept in touch with her because, like everyone has mentioned, I just love the name and everything that it represented. And she said, Keisha said, she was like, you can do your own and we don't need, but it was like, no, I want the name. I want it all. I want everything. So worked. And I think it was almost a year and a half later that we finally were able to connect and have her come to New York to do a training. And so she came, and it was 7 of us, and we became the New York, New Jersey chapter. And again, you heard somewhere in this week, or if you'll hear the live, about how we became from the chapter to national. But other than that, what intrigued me is that, unlike you, Vicky, I always saw breastfeeding. And that's, so when I got pregnant and I was going to have my daughter, I just was a kind of a no-brainer that this is what you do. And this is what I did. And then I started talking to my friends, because like Keisha and like most of us, the time I was having my baby, my friends had already had their babies. So I was like the only one. So when I started talking to them about, well, why don't Black women breastfeed in this? And I started hearing, I was like, it just wasn't connecting with me. And when I started to do some research about it and started to go down the path of becoming an IBCLC, hearing all the disparities and stuff, and I knew instinctively that whole Black women don't breastfeed was a lie. And it just still doesn't connect in my head. Because again, it was everything, that's what I saw growing up, this is what your body did, this is what you do. I'm a Black woman, I'm breastfeeding my Black child, so what do you mean that Black women don't breastfeed? And so it then started me on the path of becoming a lactation professional. And like we've all kind of touched on, in those spaces, I would be the only person of color, the only Black person. And it was like, okay, there's something more going on here, you know? So that is also why, I guess, you know, when I heard Chocolate Milk Cafe, it just clicked and it just made sense. And I knew I had to have this, I guess, ancestral demand. I had to do it for my people, because what I knew, so what also brought me to Black breastfeeding, I have a Black daughter. So she was my only one. I knew I'm a one and done. I have the brain capacity to take care of one human, keep one human alive. And so I was fine with that. But I was like, oh, she's not going to see me breastfeed. So anytime we were around Auntie Kiki, watch her breastfeed, watch her breastfeed. She would always come to, you know, the luxury of being a lactation consultant, where you can kind of, you know, make your own schedules, that she can come to my breastfeeding groups. But guess who was in my breastfeeding groups? All white women, you know, all these places I would go. All my mentors are white. So it was like, whereas I've created a lovely family amongst them too, we know representation matters. I mean, it was, and I take that to heart. I mean, like when we go to Target, she's like, always like, okay, come on, mommy, because I'm always the one rearranging the Black dolls, taking them from the back and putting them in the front, you know, because representation matters, you know. So I knew that I had to do this for my daughter to see, and for other Black children to see that we do breastfeed. And so when I was encountering, so I mentioned I work for the Department of Health, and they have a home visiting for that. And I was going into homes where people had breastfed their children. Black women were breastfeeding their children for years, and this was their second or third, and they had done for a year and 2 and 3. And so again, it was, where is this narrative coming from? Because this is a lie. This is a lie, right? And why does the devil tell you things, right? To lie to you, right? To make you think that this is something that you're not doing, so you're not going to do it if you keep hearing this lie, right? And so again, like Nubia mentioned, that whole thing from slavery too, right? We now know, and there are tons of books and studies, that stuff is like sometimes planted in our DNA, and we have to exercise that out, right? So, but one way that I knew I could start by making that cultural shift was having these spaces where women and families can come and see themselves in their sisters, right? I mean, I'm the co-facilitator of Harlem, and we just had a Harlem group on Monday, and there were 3 new people, and they came and said, I was just looking for friends. You know, like friends meeting was kind of going okay, and I was looking for friends. And then we had somebody who was there last month, and she came and was like, I wanted to just come and say I got so much confidence. And she, between last month and this month, she had a checkup with her baby, and the baby gained 2 pounds. And we were all on there like, what? and just that, you know, you walk away like, and just knowing that I can come to this space and be myself and be affirmed in what I believe, because a lot of it is that too. And as we know, sometimes in our own family, we don't get that validation, right? So having this space where people can come and just be themselves, and cups runneth over, you know, or sometimes the cups don't runneth over for a particular time, but we talk through it and we get through it. So just having that space for you know, women, lactating people, feeding babies, to just be, it just feels like I said, I'm a lactation consultant, I do other work, and I do what I call my retail portion my profession, but coming to Chocolate Milk Cafe is like, I need it. it's, you know, so sometimes it's kind of selfish. I'm like, oh, I understand we're talking about breastfeeding, but can somebody give me a recipe? Because I don't cook, you know, so I'm always doing that. That's how I get by. I'm not currently breastfeeding, but I still need to feed my child. So somebody needs to give me recipes. So it covers everything. But yeah, that's how I came to Chocolate Milk Cafe and how I continue to be in Chocolate Milk Cafe and how I'm looking forward to loving and growing Chocolate Milk Cafe. And like everyone mentioned, it's not only just the groups, but the group of us that kind of came together and formed, and the facilitators. Like every time I'm meeting somebody, it's just like, wow, we're just so like hashtag Black Girl Magic. Like we can just keep saying that we're just such a dynamic group. I feel like spoiled when I'm in these arenas of getting to hang out with these wonderful people. So
I was trying to double dutch on in for that because I was like,
Right.
you reminded me. I don't know because I'm just going to be full disclosure. This is pre-recorded, but I just want to exercise here. I know we don't say this because 2020 has been trash, but Chocolate Milk Cafe kind of is flourishing in COVID-19.
That's right. That's right.
Harlem, the meetings were small. We didn't have like Brooklyn, East Orange, and Yonkers numbers, but COVID came and everybody got time today to come to a meeting.
Yeah.
So it's actually working for us, and I just want to highlight that because we're doing great.
Right.
And I feel that we just needed that ground to break because let 2021 come in, we got nothing but growth.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I had a couple of aha moments while you were talking, LaShonda, because I was like, everybody was talking about how they came to know Mama Hakima. And for me, in 2015, I met Hakima at a conference, a midwifery conference. That was when I wrote my research study on increasing breastfeeding rates for Black women in 2015. And then I gave birth to my youngest daughter in 2015. So I was breastfeeding again. So when it came around 2017, they were like, oh, there's this training. Of course, I was intrigued, but I was like, oh, God, I'm doing so much with the kids. But as soon as they said, well, it's Hakima, so I was like, oh, wait, I remember that. I was like, okay, I'm going to make time for this because this is, important. And she was so
pause. Made time in between exams. So when she says she made time, she literally
in between clinicals, because I was in clinicals. I came straight from a 12-hour shift with weekend training, but it was that important because Hakima's talk at that conference still had stayed with me from 2015. That's how powerful it was, and it was on systemic racism and all of this. So I knew that was interwoven into breastfeeding and this whole myth that Black women don't breastfeed. And I just want to say that, like, on average for Yonkers, the moms are breastfeeding for about 2 to 2.5 years. So the problem initially was, to get the baby latched and all this. Now it's, how do I get the baby off? And I'm like, I'd much rather have that problem than the other problems. So it's really nice just to see how far, people have come. And when we look back and say, remember in the beginning where you were like, I'm not getting anything. And now it's like, somebody come get this kid, I think that's great because we're doing it, Yeah.
Someone tagged Chocolate Milk Cafe on Instagram, Shonda, because Remy Ma over there, baby can't get off of I'm like, she's like, how do you wean this child? I weaned my twin son at 27 months and he still touches my boobs. They just turned 6. So
he still touches my boobs, and he's
Stephanie comes in there the other day. She was like, "Can I just put my face near it?" I'm like, "Okay," and she'll be 5 in a month.
I was like, "Can you stop bodily autonomy? I do not want you bothering me. Please stop." But he can't get off the boobs, and he just can't. So yeah, I enjoy
part
this.
of who we are. We are not like separate entity. We actually grow with this loving, nurturing, and a lot of contact. That's how we grow as human beings. And that's what the horrible crime of formula and formula feeding that this very immoral industry promotes. And the horrible thing about it is that what they do is they work at destroying our understanding of what it takes to nurture a human being. And it takes a lot of love and care. And yes, your little one wants to kind of nuzzle. I remember liking to nuzzle, and I wasn't breastfed very long at all. But I think it's in our DNA to do that behavior. I've seen where children weren't breastfed at all, and they're trying to nuzzle even when they're older. So I think that's why our breasts soften after we have that first pregnancy. So they become these cushiony, wonderful, warm
Pillows.
Yeah, pillows. Thank you. I just think it's part of who we are, and part of the conversations we have in the group is about creating that understanding what normalness is. And when other women say, well, my child does it, and someone else says, my child does it, suddenly it's, oh, it's not.
You're not.
Not the weird one, yeah. And also, too, like you said, Vicki, like the industry, we want to highlight that, I always have, not always, but I'm sure you hear, Vicki, in your private practice or being in IBCLC, we hear it. And of course, Nubia and even Keisha, you'll probably hear it. You've heard it of friends. Like, if someone's having their second baby and now, like, because breastfeeding is trendy, they want to do the breastfeeding because I failed the first time. And I always tell people, you didn't fail. Society failed you. Yes. You don't fail at breastfeeding. If you were not successful to the point that you wanted to be, it is because our society has failed you. And as we know, in all parts of society, if in general, breastfeeding support isn't happening for breastfeeding, lactating people in general, it's happening even less of it in the communities of color, and especially in our Black communities. Because I have a friend who she said, I don't know if it's her quote, but I always heard it from her, that if like something's happening and the society gets the flu, or gets a cold, the Black people are gonna have the flu. Right? Meaning that if it's something that is going to, look at COVID, if people are getting sick and they're recovering, it's like, as Black people, we're dying from it because we always get the shorter end of the stick because no one is investing in us. And we know that how we survive and make it as a people is when we invest in ourselves. So that's why Chocolate Milk Cafe is here.
Yeah, and that's why you're talking about, like, we talk about food deserts and the first food desert. This is we're not dying because we're Black. It's because of how they're treating us.
The way Black is treated. That's right.
It goes all back to racism. I just wanted to highlight I wanted to say how Vicki was talking earlier about when people say, are they going to be attached to you? How sad it always makes me. Like, as a parent who was, first of all, I want to say, I didn't come to this, I use the terms crunchy and whatever. I literally was like, they're gonna have their own bed. I'm gonna be on a schedule. I'm not about any of this life. The reason why my nieces or whoever ain't doing this is because they're not routine enough. I had that child, and it was like on demand, and I'm like, and then I came to this realization when it came time for certain things. I remember saying it in a group or whatever. I don't like someone telling me when I'm hungry, so I'm not gonna tell my child. And it dawned on me, like, my sister's friend gave us one of those like co-sleeper things that you put in the middle of the bed. My baby never left my bed. The crib went up, but it kind of like stored stuff. And I am resistant. Like, we talk all the time about our upbringing and how it wasn't as like affectionate to some degree. And my children, I resisted to this day. I'm like, I'm not furniture, please get off of me. But I'm like, they're telling me they want, like, I'm missing their bedtime cuddles and stuff. It's okay. I mean, attachment parenting in itself, I don't like how it's practiced, but the philosophy of it is right on. Like, the nurturing, my kids are so confident. My daughter told her grandmother that you can't sleep here. This is my side of the bed. You can. And my mom was like, I'm gonna go to my own bed. She's like, fine, but this is my side. This is my part of the bed. You can't have it. And she was content in that. It was just like, you either take it or leave it. And I was just like, 6 years old. I wasn't about that. Like, I was never that confident, or even if I wasn't allowed to be so vocal or whatever.
We were be seen, not heard, right?
Yeah, and it makes me so proud when they are like standing in it. They like to correct me a lot. There's a Jaden Toussaint book here. They were like, it's Toussaint. I'm like, no, it's not. It's Toussaint. And every time I said Toussaint, they would correct me until I finally found someone who would back me up and say, this is how you pronounce his name. But the fact that, and my husband would laugh every time, the fact that they could just be like, you're wrong. This is what's right. And I'm just like, you know what? check me.
And then you can
It's
puzzle
okay.
it out,
Like,
and puzzle it out together.
yes,
And
we
it's
want
like
that.
the like Vicky was saying, like that nurturing and again affirming that this is what your little human. I always, I don't like to refer to them as baby because I think people think like babies are this novelty cute thing that you put in a little bag and you go. It's like it's a little human.
Accessorize.
You want to listen to your human. It's like, again, feeding, sleeping, with
Emotions.
it's the emotions. At the first 6 weeks of this pandemic, my daughter slept in the bed with me. She's 11. There was something.
She stopped?
And she's back in her bed now. So again, it was only the first 6 weeks, and I was like, come on. But after maybe like the first week, I was like, you know what? Let me stop, and because obviously something was good, right? When with all of us with this pandemic,
she needed it.
She needed it, right?
And that's the same thing I used to always say. Like, you push the kids away, like, oh, I don't want you to sweep. You're not doing right, doing all these things. And then when they turn teenagers, it's like, why don't they help me? Because you told them that you didn't want that from them. It's the way everything is
we're getting off into many, many tangents, but
but it's not, because it's the beauty of breastfeeding. Like, I feel like
that's what I was gonna say. We're basically saying not only in this space will you learn about feeding your little human, but you learn about, and we all talk about and share about what's going on with our little human, and we get back to that instinctual of the normal of what is it like for normal human development, right?
And that community
clinical stuff of it,
and the education,
and then the personality sides of it, right? Because we're not robots, so no matter how many books out there that are published and you read, your little human is just like you are individual to yourself. You're a human. You're creating an individual. You have created an individual. So it's not just about coming together and just like getting this class of you put your baby on and this is how the latch should feel and look and stuff. We are connecting in all ways, and
and it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows. Like, I swear, I hated that when everyone was like, I am going to sit in a meadow and breastfeed my baby, and it's going to be the best thing ever. I'm like, that it's hard. It's struggle. Like, we represent everything. Like, it's hard, it's rough. Life is, but it's part of the struggle.
I always tell people like at the 6th week, maybe 2 months, the wind blows through the hair and all that stuff, but ain't no fan in the ghetto. So you don't have that blowing in there. There ain't no meadow in the ghetto, and no fan is blowing.
But I tell you, you get to that 2-month mark, and you be looking at people over there preparing their bottles, and you're like, oh, I feel for you.
Right. And just the piece of providing people with factual information about formula. So again, like not, it's not formula shaming, but it's to give people factual information, because I don't think anybody would choose that if they really knew. I had somebody who reached out the other day, and this was just like random, like Facebook Messenger, and was like, I tried so many different things. My baby girl keeps having yeast infections, right? And I, said, are you breastfeeding? Are you this? She said, oh, I wasn't able to breastfeed, the whole thing. And turns out her child is 14 months old, still on formula. And I said, well, formula has a lot of sugar. And she's like, oh no, not the formula my child's on. I don't think they put sugar in that. I'm like, send me the label. And she sends it. She's like, see, no sugar. I'm like, the first ingredients is fructose concentrates at 47%. I was like, fructose is sugar, my love.
47%?
Like, 47. I have the label in my Facebook. And she was like, oh my God, so that's almost all sugar. I'm like, yes. I said, and at 14 months, she should not still be on formula.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
she shouldn't be, so that was just a whole,
So I think that's a good point too, that people don't realize, like if you come into these spaces, again, it's not about shaming, but like even as a lactation consultant, part of my practice is to teach people how to correctly prepare formula, how to, there's many times where I've walked into people's homes and I'm like, okay, we need to get some formula. And they're like, or they'll be ashamed to tell me that they had to supplement. And it's like, no, you have to eat just like your baby has to eat. Right? So, but it's about, and formula, again, it's the industry. What we you know, in general, again, especially in the Black community, what we want people to understand is that yes, breastfeeding, lactation, you make your body making milk, it is a natural, biological, natural process, and that not everyone across the board can do it, but we want to give you the correct evidence-based information to get you on the right path if you're wanting to do it, right? But when you walk into a doctor's office or space and they're just automatically shoving a bottle in your baby's mouth, that is not a choice. So if you don't get 100% of the information on this side and 100% of the information on this side, and then you can then choose, you are not making a choice. So somebody not informing you the benefits and what it entails to breastfeed, and then also informing you on what the pros and cons of each is, right? So you're not making a choice. So again, that's why the whole mommy wars and formula shaming and all that stuff is not happening in a Chocolate Milk Cafe. What's happening there is you're being marketed to, and the business has made these mommy wars, not the people that are trying to assist you and support you in what is the biological norm. We're not doing it to shame you. The companies are doing it and putting these messages out there. Again, there's that messaging, right? In order to create this conflict. But there's no conflict. If you are not producing, but you want to know how you can produce more, and you come to a cafe meeting and you have a bottle of formula, but you want to know how to get no one's going to shame you. We're going to assist you and support you into getting what is the goal that works for you and your little human. That's what true support is. But know that when if you're saying like, oh, it's a choice, okay, it's a choice, but make sure you have all the information from all sources in order to be able to make an informed choice, right? Because if somebody's just shoving something down your throat, you're not choosing.
And evidence-based, we work with evidence-based. We're very culturally centered, like we're speaking from our own experiences, and like we lead, the facilitators all lead. I know I didn't say I was a facilitator in any space. I used to be a facilitator for New York. I don't have the time. But all facilitators here, everybody, I love that everybody else on the board is still facilitating, and they are here to guide you. It's peer-led mostly, so when you're in a space, everyone's asking questions about if anybody else has any questions or answers or responses to that or experiences, and then we lead with evidence. So yeah, I was going to say the formula, to me, it's always like formula companies made, what is it, breast is best. It's like McDonald's being like, salad is best. Like it's subliminal for you. Like they want you to think this thing, and then then use it against you or make you feel some type of way. And definitely formula supplementation serves a purpose. It is necessary when there is an issue, but we have grown to realize, and I'm not just talking about the Black community, we just have grown to think that we are incapable of doing what our body created. Like I feel like my dream world, we would go up to people and say, are you feeding your baby? How are you feeding your baby? Maybe, or just assume like visually breastfeeding, but not like go in with the, oh, I'm breastfeeding and now I'm formula feeding and have all this like animosity towards the choice that I made. And that's another thing. I feel like if we're making sound choices, we wouldn't, sometimes we wouldn't feel so defensive of that choice. Like you made your choice, you feel comfortable. And so no matter what anybody else is doing, you didn't breastfeed your child and they choose to breastfeed their child, or your sister is choosing to breastfeed and you didn't choose to breastfeed, like,
or you didn't do the first, but now you're willing to do it.
The resentment is what
we know that just parenting in general is about making choices of what's right for you and that little human at that space and time, right? And again, like it's called the peer-to-peer, lactation support group. But when, as you can tell by just our little meeting here, when we start talking about feeding and nuzzling and, hanging out with your baby, it seeps into so many other parts of your life. So you can get that fulfilled too when you're with us. So,
but I just want to say that's why this aspect of how we birth and then that we breastfeed all of these things, they're not separate. They're not disjoint. So what happens with how you birth affects what happens afterwards, how you breastfeed. All of these things are connected. And so I think that part of why why Chocolate Milk National is so needed and so essential in all communities is that we're trying to basically, where it's all disconnected and fragmented and broken, we're trying to reconnect and so that we will have healthier communities, happier communities with children so lovingly nurtured, and families that are making positive choices for their children. Every family wants the best for their child. There isn't a single one that doesn't. But what happens is, in this place, the people who attend, the mothers and the fathers who attend, become empowered. And then they go out and they actually empower others. And I'm sure you're encountering this from your experiences. And I had someone talk to me today about one of the moms who comes to our group, and she was talking to another mother who was having so much difficulty breastfeeding. And a lot of it was that she didn't have any classes much before. And then the hospital totally sabotaged her, putting bottles in the mouth and all of that. So here she was a week and the baby hadn't latched and the baby was getting mostly formula. And this Chocolate Milk Cafe mom says, please call this mom. So we did. And we were on, we FaceTimed her. And for the first time, just over FaceTime, we walked her through the steps in the very natural kind of breast crawl, laid back way. And the baby latched. And she started sending me pictures to my phone. Baby latched again. Baby, and the look on her face, a glow look. And this was her fourth child. First two, she didn't breastfeed. Third one, she did a little, but it was difficult. And for the first time, she's having this powerful experience. So it was another mom who actually became the champion to support her. So you can see this desert is shrinking. We're shrinking it. So thank you. I just want to thank every single facilitator and every single attendee. And don't say that you're not a facilitator, Takesha. You are a champion. You are one of the major champions. We all
You facilitate everything up in here.
Exactly.
I facilitate the facilitator.
And even though you have one, LaShonda, and you don't have any more right now, you are like Mama LaShonda. You are nurturing everybody. That's all we are.
She's team auntie. She likes to be her auntie Shasha over here. I actually think it worked out really well that she has the one, and then that one's old enough to help with mine. So it worked out.
But piggybacking off of Vicky, again, if we go back to that connection of our ancestors, right? We're bringing somebody to the group. It's like what we have always done. So when we have these spaces, right, and we allow and we, teach one or bring back what did Nubia say? We're like what was your word?
We're reclaiming our space. We're healing. We're taking back our bodies.
When
revive, restore, reclaim.
It gets revived in our spirits, and we're then reaching out to another sister saying, come along. Like my meeting today, another sister, a woman came, she said, I told my friend, so she might pop in. Her friend didn't pop in, but I'm pretty sure that her friend's gonna come next time because this was her first time too. And so but that's what it is. We just realized those old ancestral vibes keep coming back because this is what we have always done as a society.
Otherwise, we wouldn't really be here if we weren't breastfeeding like that.
Keisha, I'm only gonna let you talk if you wrap it up.
I am wrapping. I was gonna ask a question so we can wrap up that way. I don't like necessarily when we do one word or whatever, but I was wondering if everybody would participate in expressing something that when you think of Chocolate Milk Cafe, how does it make you feel? Or express a word or a phrase that, does anybody had one? Am I putting you too much on the spot? Something that I can go first. You have one. You go first.
I just think only because as you said that, like the word just came right, just satisfied. Like when you think about like a baby after they, when they're milk drunk and they're just like satisfied, right? Like I feel full and I feel that this is, it's satisfying so many needs for our community. So yeah, I think just satisfied is my word. Yeah.
All right. I'll say my word since I was thinking of one. I'm thinking of love, because I feel like I'm a community. I always say the word community, but I feel like what we're really showing is love, and we're showing each other how to love. And like it's just and it fits so well for me. Like just that's what I feel like we're all doing here. Is just in community, loving one another and learning how to love ourselves and receive love. It's all in there. So, Vicki, LaShonda, anything?
I'm thinking of two words, and I'm trying to see how I can choose one of the two.
Pick them both.
Well, I am inspired every moment for all the women I meet who come, and the men, because this is for families, and seeing the children. I am inspired by each of you. I'm inspired for anyone who's watching this, for those of you who will come. Thank you. My second part is gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Shonda, and then you can bring us home.
I don't have one word because I'm not very good with words. I'm good with feelings, but how can you show feelings? Or you have to put in a word. Anyway, but what I always would I guess, does anyone know Stephanie Mills' version of Home from The Wiz?
When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing.
Home. Go ahead.
I wish I were back there.
Go ahead, Vicki.
Yes.
I wish we could do a recording over and just end on that. I don't know how to do the editing.
So that song, no matter where I hear it, at what point in the song I hear it, even as you started singing it, it always makes me cry. And it's just like, I guess if that song had a word, that would be my word, because that's how I feel when I'm in this
word. Living here in this brand new world.
Home. Why not home?
I guess home, but it's just so much more. So home in the sense of so home,
the whole entire uterus.
So home in the sense of when I'm in the spaces with and assisting with my people, right? People who look like me and people who have, not gone through the same thing, but we have a connection. And when I'm with you all in meetings and with the facility, it just feels like, and I have a friend who travels a lot and she goes to Africa a lot, and her main mission is to get more Black Americans to the continent. And I read her stories and I'm always so like jealous, I'm gonna get there, but because until I started doing Chocolate Milk Cafe and being with all of you, I realized I was never in a space where you get that, where you're just there and you're just with Black people and everyone looks like you and it's different. And again, I have mentors, and as nice as they are, they just, as somebody who's not of color in America, I don't think you can ever understand that when you're in a space with people who just is home, it's just different.
It's like the mammy, like the boob, like the caress in your grandmother's bosom, and it's that feeling, that hug.
So that is my word or my one feeling. But like we said, this is the board of Chocolate Milk Café National, and our meetings tend to go like this a lot, and we love it. But we just wanted to give you just a little glimpse, putting a face to the board. You'll be seeing a lot of postings from us this week, introducing ourselves, not only ourselves, but Chocolate Milk Cafe. Hopefully you were able to view or join in our Black Breastfeeding Week events. And if not, please go to our Instagram, Chocolate Milk Cafe at Chocolate Milk Cafe. And if you look in the highlights, you'll be able to view many of the events that we had during Black Breastfeeding Week, and as well as the events that we're having during this week to introduce ourselves. But again, I'm LaShonda.
I'm
Keisha.
Vicky.
Nubia.
And all this stuff is also on the website, so you may not have to go that far, but Instagram is where it's at. That's where we're most active. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for listening, and we hope that you can join one of the virtual lactation support groups. And if you are not lactating yourself, please, please, please pass it on to someone who is. Okay.
It will be like coming home.
Like home. And everyone go download the Stephanie Mills home version.